Hey gang, welcome back. Little backstory. I started out after I left the service many years ago, decade was the 70s, as a machinist and apprentice welder. I worked at a small research firm in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I loved the job. I was being creative. I was learning new skills. I also would go through tool catalogs like we always do. And I fell in love with this little brass hammer that was offered by the Sharper Image, back when the Sharper Image really made and sold really good tools. Little elegant brass head, little turnings on it, nice wooden handle. I could barely afford my rent. I couldn't afford to buy this thing. So I asked the master machinist, could I get a piece of, knock yourself out, make it. So I made this. I've used this ever since. 3/4 inch brass rod. I turned put little turnings in the end, give it a little elegance. Milled the slot on the milling machine. Made the handle out of a piece of oak flooring that I cut on the bandsaw and filed and shaved down to fit my hand. Nice. I've used this ever since. The head's gotten a little loose. The wood is not holding it as well, and I can't seem to make it tight anymore. So I decided I want to make a new handle. Now, I'm not going to change the head. I'm not going to clean up. I'm going to leave the patina, the dents, the bangs, the scrapes on that, but I'm going to put a new handle on it. And I want to make the handle out of either cherry or black mesquite. I'll describe black mesquite later. It's an interesting wood from South America. I'm going to turn it round with a flare at this end. Turn it round, and it's going to move out into a kind of a bulb shape for your hand. I'll turn the end to fit with the diameter to fit the width of the slot, then shave down the wood to fit into the slot, and then wedge it in place. Like I said, not going to change the head. You know that old joke about getting your grandfather's axe that's had 3 handles and 2 heads, but it's still your grandfather's axe? Well, I'm still going to keep the head, so that's not going to change. But I am going to change the handle. Next step, let's go over to the lathe and we'll show you some woods that I have to choose from to make the new handle. To the wood choices. As I mentioned earlier, cherry is the first choice. This is a turning blank I've had for a while. I've using these to make handles for caulking mallets. I'll show you those in a minute. Very nice wood. It machines very nicely, and when you put oil on it, it looks great. And of course, with cherry, with age, gets that wonderful red iridescent color. Cherry. Next choice is ash, which is a traditional handle wood, axes and hatchets and whatever. Very strong, durable, and flexible. Tighter, more open grain. Doesn't take a stain as well as the cherry or some other woods would take. So ash. And then there's the black mesquite. Prosopis nigra, it is a South American hardwood, and it was used in this country for quite a while for making caulking mallet heads. It's a good mallet head stock, but it's also a very good handle stock. Now this is pretty dense. It has a specific gravity of 0.67 to 0.70 at 12%. So that's and it turns beautifully, and it takes stain and oils very nicely. Black mesquite. So what's my choice? Okay, it's easy. I'm going to do the black mesquite handle. Now, I'll take this to the table saw and I'll hex this into 8 sides so it's easier to rough out on the lathe. I have a video, link here or in the description, on my channel of exactly how to do that simply. So you can look at that later on if you'd like. But I'm going to make it out of black mesquite. Now, the caulking mallets I was talking about. Let's see, this one is my personal caulking mallet. I made this years ago. This is made of live oak, which is the best wood in the world for using for a caulking mallet. Specific gravity of this is 0.88 at 12%. This is pretty dense wood. The grain, again, looks all interwoven. There's no openness of the grain at all. It lasts forever. The rings are 4130 chrome moly steel, both in and out, keeps from splitting and checking. But the beauty of live oak is when you're caulking a boat is the sound. That sound lets you know you're making the caulk into the boat correctly. And what we're talking about here is oakum, which is hemp fiber that's been tarred, or cotton. And this is a boat that has caravel planking, so the planks are right up against each other, edge to edge. And it does not seal the boat up from the water. It tightens up the hull. Google it. So that's one made of live oak. Cherry handle. Here's a black mesquite head. Same thing, chromoly rings. This one has just turned and had the rings pressed onto it. Now here's one that I made out of black mesquite, and I actually stained it or oiled it and put a finish on it. So you look at that red color, that's pretty nice. Again, chromoly steel rings. And with the slots. See the slots? The slots are there for essentially absorbing some of the energy to keep it from your hands. Another reason for a cherry handle, it absorbs energy a little bit better. But if you buy these back in the day and had a shorter slot and you cut that slot open to tune it for the sound that you wanted. Now this is a different sound than the live oak. Higher pitched, but loud enough. Anyway, that's cocking mallets. So, off to the table saw to turn this into a hex, and then I'll chuck it up on the lathe and we'll turn it. I'm not going to film the entire turning, that's just too long. So here it is, turned, ready to be finished. I need to shape this end to fit, cut this lob off of course, and shape this end to fit the slot. The diameter of this end here is the dimension or width of that slot right there. So a little bit of extra. So I got to make that fit nice and clean. Take the ends off and dress it up, put a finish on it. And as you know, with mallets and hammers, the grain and the head go in the same direction, so you've got the strength of the grain. And you can either cross wedge it or you can inline wedge it, either way. But that's what I'll be doing. I may do a little bit of modification here. I might flare the end of this a little bit to give a little more bite when I wedge it. I used a tool that I've not used on the lathe before. I've always had issues with the skew chisel. A lot of turners do. I don't turn enough to be as proficient as I would like. And the skew chisel always has stymied me, has chipped and thrown stuff across the yard. But I was turned on to these Henry Taylor skew chisels. They're curved at the end instead of being straight across. So it's very difficult to catch a corner on one of these. And you can line up exactly where you want to put the workpiece and work down the workpiece. So I tried it for the very first time. It is like night and day between a regular skew chisel and one of these. I'm not sponsored by Henry Taylor. I'm giving him a heads up because I like his stuff. Link down in the description, of course. And we also got the little 1/2-inch one too. I use that as well. Very, very impressed with these. For those who have issues with the skew chisel, give it a try. They're not cheap though, of course. Now, you notice when I was finishing that up, I grabbed a bunch of sawdust and ran it along the workpiece at high speed. A lot of you turners already know this technique, but those who don't, it basically, after you've gone down to the finest sandpaper you want, in this case 320, I did that to burnish the wood and give it a nice gloss finish, and that's exactly what it does. Pick up some of the shavings, press them against it, and run it up and down the workpiece. It really burnishes the wood up nice and gives it a nice finish. So now I'm going to go ahead and modify this thingy and get the head on it and wedge it, and I'll have a hammer. What I'm doing here is slowly whittling away wood to fit the slot. Now I roughed it out on the bandsaw. The rest is all going to be handwork with files and rasps. So this is going to take a while. So what I'll do is I'll continue working on this, and then at some point turn the camera back on and see the progress, just like I did when I was turning on the lathe. So onward and upward. Okay, there it is. It's all the way down. I have to clean up the seat down here, wedge it and cut it off, and I should be ready to go with some kind of finish. And there we go. The head fits. Get it around the right way because I got a little flare in it. I did flare this up a little bit so when I wedge it out it'll have a better purchase on it. I have cut a slot for the key, the locking key, and that's going to be made out of maple, and I'll glue that in place. Once that's done, of course, I'll lop it off and smooth off the top end, and then maybe I'll use some aniline dye on this. I don't know. I'll look into that. Anyway, ready to put the head on now. Got a little out of sequence with the camera, so I didn't get a shot of me putting it in, but I don't know if it's focusing on that or not, but the wedge is in place and glue is drying. So I have really got a hammer now with a nice new handle. One more step and we'll be done. Here it is, all done. 2 coats of amber shellac is what I decided on. That will allow oxidation, of course, for the wood to change to a more reddish color as it ages. So I have my new little mallet handle for my wonderful little brass mallet, the very first tool I ever made for myself. And you know, when I was cutting the end of this to fit, it was more of using a chip carving knife and a fine rasp than anything else to get that to fit correctly. So that's done. Old handle, new handle. Yeah, of course I'm going to keep this in my stock. I might use this for something else, some part of this for something else. So that's it. On to the next project, and have a great day. Make something great out of wood.